How could you forget something so basic? Clara, Emily would never be so careless. Beatrice's sharp tone sliced through the soft hum of the kitchen fan, her words wrapping around me like a noose. My hand froze mid-stir, fingers tightening around the wooden spoon as a knot formed in my chest. The pot of soup simmered on the stove, its rich aroma filling the air, but all I could smell was the bitterness in her voice. My name is Clara Mason. I'm 32, a nurse, and for the past 3 weeks, I've been the full-time caregiver for my recovering mother-in-law. When Beatrice had surgery last month, I moved into her house, juggling my hospital shifts with sleepless nights by her side. Not out of obligation, not because anyone asked me to, but because it felt like the right thing to do. I'd hoped, maybe foolishly, that it would bridge the cold distance that had always existed between us. That for once she might see me. But no matter how much I did, my efforts remained invisible, overshadowed by Emily, the perfect daughter who breezed in once a week, smiled for the camera, and left just as quickly. I swallowed hard, but the words I wanted to say lodged like thorns in my throat. Beatrice turned back to the table, muttering under her breath, her disapproval hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Emily, of course, was nowhere to be found. She was running late for her weekly performance. And yet, Beatrice spoke of her as if she were the one standing here, ladle in hand, tending to her every need. Careless. The word felt like a knife twisting in my stomach. I had given up everything these past 3 weeks, canceled plans, traded shifts, even missed my anniversary dinner with Ben, all to be here. And for what? To be labeled careless over a pinch of salt? Meanwhile, Emily could waltz in for an hour, snap a perfectly framed selfie at Beatrice's bedside, and walk out draped in praise. I stared into the pot, my hand trembling slightly as I stirred. A different kind of heat simmered now, not from the stove, but from somewhere deep inside me. It wasn't just Beatrice's words. It was Emily, her effortless smugness, the way she crafted every moment to paint herself as the devoted daughter. And the worst part, she knew I wouldn't fight back. At least, not until, just as I opened my mouth to defend myself, the front door creaked open, and Emily strolled in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Smells good in here," she chirped, a bouquet of flowers in one hand and her phone in the other, as if she had just dropped by to sprinkle a little sunshine on everyone's day. She glanced at me briefly, her smile lingering a second too long before shifting her attention to Beatrice. "How's my favorite patient today?" she cooed, leaning down to kiss her mother's cheek. Beatrice's face lit up instantly, her earlier frustration with me vanishing like smoke in the wind. "Emily, sweetheart, you're just in time," she said, her voice warm and affectionate. "I was just telling Clara how important it is to pay attention to the little things." Not that she'd understand. Her gaze flicked toward me, sharp and dismissive. Emily placed the flowers on the counter and let out a soft laugh. "Oh, Mom, I'm sure Clara's doing her best," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Then she turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Don't worry, Clara. Taking care of Mom isn't easy. I've been learning that myself." My jaw clenched, words burning at the tip of my tongue, desperate to be said. But Emily was already moving, pulling out her phone for what I knew was coming next. She leaned in beside Beatrice, angling herself just right, tilting her head at the perfect angle, and click. "Just want to capture these precious moments," she said lightly, as if she hadn't just stolen the spotlight from everything I had been working tirelessly to hold together. As she scrolled through her phone, probably selecting the best filter to perfect her devoted daughter image, Beatrice sighed contentedly. "It's so nice to have both my girls here," she murmured, her gaze lingering on Emily. Then, with a fond smile, she added, "Though I'll admit, Emily always knows just how to make me feel special." My grip tightened on the ladle, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Both her girls. I had spent the last 3 nights waking up every 2 hours to help Beatrice shift positions, prepare her medication, and make sure she was comfortable. I had sacrificed time, energy, and moments I could never get back. And yet, here I was, overshadowed, overlooked, and dismissed. Meanwhile, Emily had spent 5 minutes in the room and already won the day. Curated snapshots and vague reassurances. I adjusted Beatrice's pillow, ensuring she was comfortable, something I had done a dozen times today alone. Meanwhile, Emily's contribution amounted to curated snapshots and vague reassurances that she was always thinking of Mom. Mom, Emily began, her tone light, casual, breezy, like she had all the time in the world. I was actually thinking of bringing you that herbal tea you love next week. You know, the one from that little shop downtown. She sighed, as if the weight of her busy schedule pained her. It's just been so hectic at work, but I'll make time. Oh, Emily, that sounds wonderful. Beatrice beamed, her eyes practically glowing with pride. You're always so thoughtful. I couldn't stop myself this time. Thoughtful! The word escaped my lips, sharper than I intended. Both Beatrice and Emily turned to me. Beatrice's brows knitted together in confusion. Emily's smile remained, but her eyes darkened, just for a moment. She drops by once a week to take a few photos and then disappears. I said, my voice tight. I've been here every single day, doing everything I can to make sure you're comfortable. Emily's smile didn't waver. If anything, it widened, polished and impenetrable. But her eyes? Colder now. Clara, she said smoothly, her voice calm-measured. I didn't realize this was a competition. We're all doing our part in our own way. Some more than others, I muttered, turning back to the stove. The shift in the room was immediate. Tension thickened the air, pressing down on me. But I refused to let her patronizing tone be the last word. And yet, the moment the words left my mouth, regret flickered through me. Even though I was right, even though I had every reason to say it, I hated that I'd let my frustration spill over. That I had stooped to making it sound like keeping score. I wasn't trying to keep score. That wasn't who I wanted to be, no matter how unfair things felt. Later that evening, I slipped into the guest room, shutting the door softly behind me. The moment I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone was already in my hand. Ben picked up on the second ring. His voice was warm but distracted. Hey, everything okay? No. The word tumbled out before I could stop it. I'm exhausted, Ben. I've been doing everything for your mom. Everything, and she doesn't even notice. Emily waltzes in for 10 minutes with flowers and a fake smile, and suddenly she's the perfect daughter. Ben sighed, the sound crackling through the speaker. Clara, you know how my mom is. She's always been like this. You can't take it personally. I know she's like this, I snapped, my frustration spilling over. But that doesn't make it easier. Do you have any idea what it feels like to be here, day in and day out, and still be invisible? I paused, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. My voice was quieter when I spoke again. I just needed you to understand. Ben's tone softened, a hint of concern cutting through his usual practicality. Clara, maybe it's time to take a break. You've done more than enough. You've done everything. Honestly, why don't you come home for a week? Let Emily step up for once. I miss you. And you need to take care of yourself, too. His words caught me off guard. The knot in my chest loosened just slightly. The thought of going home, of sleeping in my own bed, of being with Ben, was so tempting it almost hurt. But then I thought of Beatrice, her frailty, her stubbornness, and the guilt crept in, twisting in my stomach. I don't know, I murmured. What if she needs me? She'll manage, Ben said firmly. Clara, you've been more than generous. It's okay to step back. You're not a bad person for putting yourself first for once. Ben and I lived 2 hours away in the small apartment we had made our home for the past 5 years. When Beatrice's surgery was scheduled, I had volunteered to move in temporarily to help with her recovery. Ben had wanted to be here too. He adored his mom, despite her quirks, but his job had hit a critical point, and deadlines weren't optional. Still, he called every day to check in, always asking how I was holding up. I knew it weighed on him that he couldn't be here, that I was carrying the weight of it alone. But as much as I missed him, I couldn't blame him. He was doing the best he could, just like I was. I sighed, gripping the phone a little tighter. I don't know, Ben, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not that I don't want to come home, I do. I miss you, and I'm exhausted, but I can't just leave her like this. She still needs someone here. A brief silence stretched between us before Ben spoke again, his voice calm but firm. I get it, Clara. You care about her, even if she doesn't always show it. Just think about it, okay? You've done so much already. It's not selfish to take care of yourself, too. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'll think about it, I said quietly, though I wasn't sure if I could actually let myself walk away. I promise. It felt like the right thing to say, even if I didn't believe it yet. The next morning, I found Beatrice in the living room, sitting upright in her chair with the television on low. The weather report droned on in the background, but her gaze was sharp, focused. She didn't acknowledge me as I entered. For a second, I hesitated, debating whether to start with a simple good morning. But before I could open my mouth, she turned to me with a pointed look. "Clara," she said, her tone already laced with irritation. I couldn't help but notice how late dinner was last night. It's not good for my digestion to eat that late, you know. I blinked, caught off guard. Dinner had been ready as soon as Emily left. I thought we'd agreed on that. Yes, because you didn't have it. You didn't have it when I prepared it earlier, Beatrice interrupted, her tone sharp. When Emily is here, everything feels more put together. She doesn't need to be told what to do. My hands clenched at my sides as I swallowed back the response I wanted to give. Emily stayed for less than an hour, I said carefully. She didn't even stay for dinner. That's not the point, Beatrice snapped, leaning forward slightly. Emily knows how to handle herself. She doesn't wait for me to tell her when or how to do things. She's considerate. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I've been here every single day, Beatrice, I said, my voice tight. I've done everything I can to make sure you're comfortable. And yet somehow, it always feels like a struggle, she shot back, her voice turning cold. You're here physically, Clara, but emotionally, you're checked out. You don't want to be here. The words hit like a gut punch, knocking the air from my lungs. That's not fair, I said, my voice trembling despite my best effort to keep it steady. I put my entire life on hold to be here for you. Oh, how noble of you, she cut in, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Sacrificing so much, she scoffed. If it's such a burden, Clara, maybe you should have just let Emily handle it. She's busy, yes, but at least she doesn't make me feel like I'm an inconvenience. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. The words sat heavy on my tongue, but I knew that anything I said now would only make things worse. So I straightened, my voice quiet but firm. I'm doing my best, Beatrice. I'm sorry if that's not enough. She waved a dismissive hand, already turning back to the television. Your best isn't what I need, Clara. Emily understands me in ways you never will. The air in the room turned suffocating, her words hanging between us like thick smoke. Without another word, I turned and left. I made it to the guest room before the weight of it all crashed down on me. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the tears to stay put. Not yet. Not in front of her did I stare at the neatly folded clothes in my suitcase, my thoughts swirling. Beatrice's words echoed in my mind, each one digging deeper into the ache that had been building for weeks. No matter how much I gave, how much I tried, it was never enough. And it never would be. My fingers tightened around my phone as I scrolled through my messages, stopping at the last one from Ben. You've done enough, Clara. Please come home. The words felt heavier now, but they also carried a clarity I hadn't been ready to admit before. Ben was right. I had done enough. I had given my time, my energy, my peace of mind, hoping, foolishly, that it might matter, that it might change something. But nothing I did would ever measure up to the pedestal Beatrice had placed Emily on. And I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who refused to see me. I let out a shaky breath, wiping away the tears that threatened to spill. This wasn't about giving up. It was about knowing when I had reached my limit. For my own sanity, I had to stop waiting for Beatrice's approval. I had to go home. That afternoon, I found Beatrice in the kitchen. The air between us was thick, heavy with everything left unsaid. My heart pounded as I stepped forward, determined to finally say what I needed to. Beatrice, I said, my voice steady but soft. I need to talk to you. She barely looked up. If this is about dinner tonight, I'd rather you focus on getting it right than wasting time chatting. My jaw tightened, but I pushed through. No, it's not about dinner. It's about how I've been treated since I got here. That made her pause. She set her spoon down with a deliberate clink and folded her hands in front of her. Oh! Her eyebrow arched. And how exactly have you been treated, Clara? I took a deep breath, the words spilling out before I could second-guess myself. I've been here every single day, doing everything I can to take care of you. I rearranged my life. I missed important moments. I've given you everything I have. And yet, no matter what I do, it's never enough. My voice wavered, but I pressed on. You've made it clear, over and over, that you don't value me. And honestly, I'm tired of being treated like I'm worthless. Beatrice sat back, her expression unreadable. Then, with chilling calmness, she said, "Well, if you're so tired, Clara, no one's forcing you to stay." She tilted her head, her voice sharp as a blade. "Frankly, Emily would do a much better job anyway. She always has." The words stung sharper than I'd expected, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt. "Emily isn't here, Beatrice," I said, my voice firmer now. "She never is. She breezes in, takes a few pictures, and leaves. I've been the one taking care of you." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift with each word. "But if you think she can do better, fine." My heart pounded, but I stood my ground. "I'm done." Beatrice didn't flinch. Her expression was as cold as ever. "Good," she said with disdain. "At least I won't have to listen to the complaining. Emily knows how to show respect." I nodded, the finality of her words settling over me like a heavy fog. "I hope she can give you what you need," I said quietly, "because I won't be back." I turned and walked away before she could respond, my chest tight but my head held high. It was over. I was done. Back in the guest room, I packed my things with quiet determination. Each folded piece of clothing felt like another weight lifted from my shoulders. Beatrice's cutting words still echoed in my mind, but I shoved them aside. This was it. No more bending myself into knots for someone who refused to see me. Once everything was packed, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. My thumb hovered over Emily's number before I finally pressed call. It rang several times before she picked up. "What is it, Clara?" Emily's voice was clipped, impatient. "I'm kind of busy right now." I took a deep breath, refusing to let her tone get to me. "I'm leaving," I said simply. "I've packed my things. I'm heading home. Beatrice needs someone here, so congratulations. You're up." There was a long pause. Then, "What?" Her voice shot up, sharp with disbelief. "Wait, what are you talking about? You can't just leave." "I can and I am," I said firmly. "I've done my part, Emily. It's your turn now." She let out a high-pitched laugh, the kind that wasn't real, more disbelief than anything else. But I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Relief. "Oh, sure. Just drop everything on me, why don't you?" Emily's voice dripped with amusement, until it didn't. "Do you have any idea how busy I am? I can't just. I've been here for weeks." I cut in, my voice steady. "You've had time to prepare for this. Mom's your responsibility, too, and let's be honest, she seems to think you're better at this anyway. I'm sure you'll figure it out." "Are you kidding me?" Emily shrieked, her tone turning frantic. "I don't have time to babysit her. That's your thing, Clara. You're the caretaker, not me." "Not anymore," I said coldly. "Good luck, Emily." Before she could respond, I hung up. Exhaling a shaky breath, I stood, grabbed my suitcase, and headed for the door. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. It was time to leave. For days had passed since I left. I had done my best not to think about what might be happening back at Beatrice's house. But when my phone buzzed late that evening, her name flashing on the screen, I hesitated. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity, and maybe a flicker of guilt, got the better of me. I picked up. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Clara." Her voice was different. Shaky. Strained. She sounded tired, maybe even desperate. I need to talk to you." I hesitated, unsure of what to say. "Is everything okay?" "No." The word was heavy with frustration, and something else I couldn't quite place. "Emily hasn't been here since you left. She's barely answering my calls, and when she does, she has some excuse about work or being too busy. She promised me she'd be here." I bit my lip, resisting the urge to say I told you so. Instead, I stayed quiet and let her vent. "I've had to do everything on my own," Beatrice continued, her voice trembling. "I can't even manage the stairs some days. I don't know what to do, Clara. I feel completely abandoned. Her words hit harder than I expected, stirring a mixture of emotions, sympathy, vindication, and a lingering ache of resentment. She had treated me like I was nothing, and now she was realizing what it meant to truly feel alone. "I'm sorry to hear that, Beatrice," I said, finally, my tone neutral. "But I warned you this might happen. Emily knows how to say the right things, but she's never been the one to follow through." There was a long pause. Then, for the first time, Beatrice's voice softened. I didn't think she'd just leave me like this." Her voice wavered. I thought she cared. I stayed silent. I didn't need to twist the knife. She was already feeling the consequences of her choices. I took a deep breath, gripping the phone tightly. "Beatrice, I am sorry you're feeling this way. I wouldn't wish this on anyone," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "But I can't come back. Not right now." Her tone sharpened instantly. "What do you mean, not right now?" "I mean I can't drop everything again to move back in," I said firmly, though my heart ached as I spoke. "Beatrice, you treated me like I was nothing when I was there. I gave you everything I had, and you made me feel like I didn't matter. I can't put myself through that again." Her response was immediate and furious. "Oh, so now you're going to hold a grudge, are you?" she snapped. "You think you're so perfect, Clara? You think I didn't notice the mistakes you made while you were here? Don't act like you're some martyr. You've never been good enough for this family, and now you're proving it." Her words hit like a slap, but I refused to let them break me. "Beatrice," I said calmly, "I'm not perfect. I know I made mistakes, but I tried. I gave everything I had, and you never saw that. And now, after everything, you expect me to come back like none of that happened?" She let out a bitter laugh. "I should have known. You're just like everyone else. Selfish." A beat of silence, then cold as ice. At least Emily would never abandon me like this. I swallowed hard. "Emily already has," I said quietly. The words hung in the air. For the first time, Beatrice was silent, stunned. Then, her fury returned like a wildfire. "Don't you dare talk about Emily like that. She has her reasons. Unlike you, who's just looking for an excuse to quit." Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Beatrice, but I can't come back. Not like this." Before she could scream at me again, I ended the call. My hands trembled. Her words sat heavy on my chest. But I knew. I couldn't go back. Not now. Maybe not ever. 5 days passed. I tried to move on, pushing the memories of Beatrice's anger to the back of my mind. The sense of peace I had found was fragile, held together by long walks and conversations with Ben. Then, late in the evening, my phone buzzed again. "Beatrice." I stared at the screen for a long moment, debating whether to answer. With a deep breath, I picked up. "Hello." There was silence on the other end. Then, her voice, broken, raw with emotion. "Clara." A sob. "I'm so sorry." Her words tumbled out in fragments, shattered by tears. I don't know what to say. I've been sitting here, thinking about everything. I closed my eyes and listened. "I can't believe how awful I was to you." Beatrice's voice trembled through the phone. "You didn't deserve any of it. I don't even know why I acted like that. You gave so much, and I threw it back in your face." I sat down, stunned. "Beatrice," I started, but she cut me off. "No, let me finish," she pleaded. "I've been so unfair to you, Clara. So blind. You didn't have to come here, but you did. You took care of me when no one else would. And I treated you so terribly." Her sobs deepened, and my chest tightened. "I regret it so much," she choked out. "Emily hasn't been here in days, and now I see it. I see what you were saying all along. I need you to know how sorry I am. I didn't deserve your kindness, but you gave it anyway." Tears pricked at my eyes, her sincerity cutting through the pain I had carried for so long. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Thank you, Beatrice," I said softly. "That means more than you know." "I don't expect you to forgive me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But I had to tell you. I'm so sorry." I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words settle. "I'll need time," I said finally, my voice gentle but firm. "But I appreciate your apology. It's a start." "It is," she said, her sobs quieting. I'll try to do better, Clara. I promise. When the call ended, I set the phone down, my heart heavy, but lighter all at once. For the first time, it felt like there was a path forward, however slow it might be. After Beatrice recovered, everything was different. She treated me with kindness and gratitude. Her sharp edges softened into something gentler. Each visit felt lighter, filled with moments of connection rather than tension. Beatrice went out of her way to show her appreciation, not in grand gestures, but in small, meaningful ways. A quiet thank you, a warm smile, a genuine effort to listen. The past couldn't be erased, but it no longer weighed us down. For the first time, I felt seen. I felt valued, and that made all the difference.